Hi, folks. C.W. Johnson Jr. here on this very overcast Saturday morning. Today is January 20th. Yesterday was January 19th, Robert E. Lee's birthday. So happy belated Robert E. Lee Day to all you Southern people out there. And today is not as cold as it used to be earlier this week. Earlier this week it was like 11 degrees. And that was very cold, and it snowed here, which it usually doesn't do here. And snow is beautiful, and I was out walking in it, and it was as beautiful as a postcard where it belongs. But it's also very wet and sticky, and all the roads were closed down, so I could not make it to the library or the restaurant over here, something tasty, to use their better Wi-Fi they have than my house has. So that's why I did not. That was one reason I was not able to get a episode of That To Be Movie up this week. The other reason being I had relatives in town, and I spent time with them as a decent human being instead of working on the video. It's the Give Me Tomorrow, which I've been working on since November, and still working on that one. Hopefully I'll get it up next week. It's by Patrick K. O'Donnell, and it is about the Korean War, basically the Korean War equivalent of the Band of Brothers, or Pacific miniseries. Make a great miniseries, so hopefully I'll get it up next week, and hopefully the producers of Band of Brothers will find out about Give Me Tomorrow, the story of George Company, and it'll become a miniseries on HBO. One can only dream. So this is what I've been reading this week. I've been reading The Stolen Village by Des King O'Brien Press. I finished it finally. Very fascinating book, very interesting book, very sad book. And it shows how slavery is not just a white southern thing, it's our European thing, it's a world thing, it's a human thing, it's a human problem. And how slavery was very common back in the day, and how one of the biggest slave trading cultures in the world was actually African, North African. So, not to get on my soapbox here, you can't use slavery as an excuse of not getting up and getting a job. You know what I mean? Slavery was wrong, and we're still living with residues from it, but every race has been enslaved, every race has enslaved other races. So you can't use slavery as a excuse not to be a decent human being who works hard and takes self-responsibility. So this is definitely be a 12 Years a Slave type movie. It would have a very pretty Irish soundtrack to it. Another book I've been reading is The Admiral of the Amazon, John Randolph Tucker and His Confederate Colleagues in Peru by David R. Warwick from University Press of Virginia. Fascinating book for someone who's both interested in Peru and the American Civil War, War of Northern Aggression. It's War Between States. Very fascinating book. Some parts are dull and drag. Other parts are very interesting. It goes into diplomatic relations back in post-Civil War South America. How the Spanish are trying to take back their colonies down there, and the exploration of the Amazon. It also goes into how there were free men of color on Admiral Tucker's ship when he was a Confederate officer outside Charleston, and then they were with him at Sailor's Creek, Virginia. So there were black Confederates. Another book, another thought on this book, it could make a great Last Samurai type movie, and it would maybe make a fictional character based on Randolph, so he can be Randolph Tucker, so he could be at some places where Randolph Tucker wasn't, but some very important places in Peruvian and South American history. So that could make a great Last Samurai type movie. Another book I just started actually today is you can't really see it, can you? Hope in Hang Nam, A Story of the Korean War by David Watts Jr. It is from David Watts Jr., self-published. It's pretty decent, pretty interesting. It goes into a story we don't hear a lot about, the rescue of Korean civilians during the Korean War. Hopefully, it'll be lighter next time I do this video, and we can talk a little more about this one. I finished The Persecutor by Sergei Kirkov. Inflicting terror and suffering upon Russian Christians was his assignment, and he did his job well. It is from Spiral Books, which is a Fleming H. Revival Company. Uh, Very fascinating book, sort of equilibrium type story. It's very inspiring to see how the faith and strength of the Russian Christian believers was able to have an influence on Sergei and change his life and how he went from hating them to being one of them. So make a great movie. Maybe the director of The Case for Christ and the producers of God's Not Dead, Pure Flix, can come along and make this into a movie. And it's a little sad, but it's a true story about how believers really uh, suffered from persecution and how they really changed people's lives by their example. Make a great film that could appeal to all broad range of audiences, both those who like inspiring stories and those who like realistic stories. And this is a very realistic, at the same time, very inspiring story. Then I finished Stubby the War Dog, the true story of World War II's bravest dog by Anne Bosom. It's from National Geographic Kids. It's about Sergeant Stubby, who will be having a movie come out, I believe it's in April. And this is a great way to introduce kids to World War II or World War I history. And if you're a fan of dogs, I definitely recommend it. It has a lot of pretty pictures in it and tidbits about history. Currently, I am listening to Sergeant Reckless by Tom Clavin, read by Jim Manchester. Tom Clavin. This is a fascinating story about this war horse in Korea, and he was basically trained to carry up the shells to the gun that these Marines were firing at during the pivotal battle late on in the war. And I know they're trying to make a movie out of it. It definitely deserves to be a movie. Both audiences who like horse movies and audiences who like war movies that honor our veterans will like it. So this should definitely be a movie that honors our Korean War veterans. What I've been watching, last night I got to see 12 Strong. Great movie, a lot of language, but great movie. It did end before I thought it would. So if you read the book, don't be expecting like some of the end stuff in it to happen. Rather than that, it was a great book. It'll make a great movie. I know Thor being Captain America was a little distracting. At the same time, anything that Jerry Bruckheimer does is great. So very beautifully shot film, well acted, great cinematography, great music score. Kept you on the edge of your seat, well paced. I watched The Post, which is obviously going to be a Oscar contender this year. Definitely Meryl Streep's performance is going to be up there. Tom Hanks was actually pretty incredible in this one because he usually plays nice characters, and this one he was kind of a jerk, and I really hated him because he did so well, and it's like you could hardly recognize Tom Hanks in it. So it's definitely a well-made film. I did feel like some of the feminist subplot of it just distracted from the main plot. The main plot of security versus national security versus freedom of the press. The conflict of releasing the information, even though it might hurt our troops on the ground in Vietnam. I think that should have paid a little more attention to that and not have these subtle, very well done subtle hints at feminism, radical feminism throughout the movie. Even though I like the fact they weren't in your face as some of the other movies that have come out recently, but still they were distracting from the main story. And of course, Steven Spielberg masterfully does it. Yeah, that felt, I guess it was probably the screenwriter who wrote it in. They should have focused maybe more on the troops returning home and finding out their government lied about why they were there. I think that would have been a little better, but it's a great film. Definitely recommend you go see it. Earlier this week I watched The Wall. Can't really recommend it. Kind of depressing. I watched Wizard of Lies. Definitely depressing, but I can see why it got a Golden Globe nominations. Robert De Niro did a great job as Bernie Madoff. He reminded me a lot of older people that I know who are very who work in finance. They're very smooth, very confident, very self-assured, and it's all the emotion was in the eyes. And so I can recommend that if you're interested in Bernie Madoff scandal. And after seeing what a guy named Bernie did to a lot of investors, it's kind of hard to trust anyone named Bernie in the White House. Just saying. And then after that Bernie movie from Carthage, Texas, kind of hard to trust people named Bernie anymore. So that's what I've been watching. I think that's what I've been watching this past week. So definitely go see 12 Strong. Go see The Post. And a few thoughts. Yesterday was Robert Lee's day. And Lee was an honorable American. Churchill said that. JFK said that. Roosevelt said that. Eisenhower said that. And the fact that people are tearing down his statue because they disagree with the choice he made, so is indicative of how intolerant of a society we have become, because it shows, like we paint people on either side of the aisle with the broadest brush and make them as terrible as possible. But Lee was defending his home. He said he wasn't fighting for slavery. He rejoiced that slavery was ended. And he has a character of modesty, self-control, humility. And that's why he said he didn't want statues made out of himself, because he was very modest and he didn't want the people in the devastated South raising money to build statues to him. So that's why he didn't want any statues to him. So stop saying, we didn't want any statues, so tear them down. That if you're offended by a statue to the point you're going to commit violence against it, the problem isn't with the statue, it is with you. So that's a thought from that Christmas book I read, A Christmas, Pearl Harbor Christmas by Stanley Weintraub. He mentioned that the Nazis took down Woodrow Wilson's statue in Czechoslovakia. He also mentioned the Nazis had the first war on Christmas because Christmas cards were outlawed, carols were outlawed under Nazi Germany. But the Nazis tore down statues, so just because a bunch of neo-Nazis showed up in Charlottesville to protest the removal of a statue, which they would not been there, the statue had not been being not if the statue had not if they were not trying to take the statue down, the neo-Nazis were not showing up. So just because a bunch of neo-Nazi imbeciles show up that protest the removal of a statue does not mean you go about removing all statues because neo-Nazis. Because you might be acting like a Nazi, because Nazis took down statues. So you're not a Nazi just because you want statues to come down, but that's something to think about. So that's what I'm reading, watching, listening to, walking on some of my stories. About to go in the gym here. So y'all have a great day, and I hope y'all stay safe during this winter weather. God bless. Great week.